Hey everyone, let's get started. I'm Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm going to be at the conference doing a handful of conversations. Many of them are going to go on the podcast feed, including this one. And I just want to say we have an amazing audience here, and I want the people who are listening at home to get a sense of the type of crowd that we have. So I want you to let them hear it. You got to be loud. Let's hear you guys. That's what I'm talking about. All right, we got energy in the morning. Okay, we have unbelievable speakers here. I want to introduce them. We have Blaise Aguirre y Arcas. How'd I do? Nice. Okay, he's a VP Research Fellow at Google. Francesca Rossi, who is the Global Head of AI Ethics at IBM. And Joel Pino, who runs Meta's AI research. And we also have, joining us virtually, Professor Anil Seth, who's the Professor of Cognitive Neuroscience at the University of Sussex. Shout out, Anil. What's up, man?
Hey, I hope you can hear me over there. Sorry I can't be with you in person.
Yeah, well, we're sorry I can't be here too, but yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Okay, so the topic of our conversation is factor fantasy, AI, cognition, and the dangers of hype. Now, I thought that was a pretty good topic for a conversation. But Blaise already hates it. So, Blaise, why don't you talk about your problem with the way that this is framed, and that'll get us going, I think.
Sure, happy to. So the trouble is it's a binary, and I don't think that AI is either fact or fantasy. We've seen very, very polarized narratives about this. On the one hand, there are people claiming that AI is conscious, and we should be starting to have a conversation about robot rights. That's certainly not a view that most people in the research community have. And then there's a sort of opposing camp of people who are saying that AI is a hoax or is just statistics, and it's not really artificial, it's not really intelligent. There's no such thing as AI that understands concepts, and that seems a little bit gaslighty to me. I mean, having worked with these systems quite a bit over the last couple of years, and especially the new generation of large language models and things like them. It's very interesting and very impressive what they're doing. So I think we need to take that seriously, and we need to start to think about a kind of middle zone of the conversation where we acknowledge that there's something really cool happening here, and that it has very material things to tell us about what intelligence is. They can understand concepts, but this is not. It's not personhood. It's we haven't sort of made alien contact or something either. These are also models of human culture, human language, and in that sense very much a part of our intelligence, if you like.
And when you say AI, you mean AI that's conscious? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm talking about things like large language models, foundation models, that are capable of having very convincing chats, for instance. I think that's what's captured a lot of people's imaginations. And also things like inverse captioning systems that put prompts in and they can make very, very compelling images. These sorts of things, which we'll be seeing much more of over the coming decade.
Francesca, when you hear this, how do you react?
Well, my reaction is that there is a lot of fantasy and fact about AI in general, independently of this discussion and the large language models and so on. But of course, AI is not yet, at least the AI that we see in the science fiction movies. That's not yet there. But there is a lot of facts about AI that we can say. AI is a technology that is very useful and is improving and evolving every day. Every week almost we have 2 or 3 advancements that come out about mostly generative AI at this point. But overall, I think I would not ask questions that may be distracted to the research and to the fact that AI is a powerful technology to use right now. And what I see mostly important from these foundation models, large language models, is their ability to be providing tools for very useful applications that right now maybe are not possible or possible with much more labeled data that maybe in some scenarios are not available. Rather than asking myself whether there is some label that usually I attach to human beings that can be attached to these models as well.
Bill, why do you think we're talking about this? I mean, this has been a conversation that's gone on for a long time about, whether AI is sentient. And for a long time, people are like, all right, let's actually focus on the research. That happened for a long time. Now, Blaze's colleague might have had something to do with this. But I'm curious why you think this has come to the fore right now and whether it's a productive conversation or not.
It's a good question, and let me sort of double click on something Francesca mentioned, which is, for many years, the rate of progress we saw on AI was mainly due to supervised learning. So you present large amounts of data, but we have humans annotating the concepts that we want the machines to be predicting. And that notion of supervised learning is one where we feel the behavior of the AI is very well contained within a set of topics that we as humans have prescribed. The changes we're seeing over the last couple of years is really in generative models. So the models are still ingesting large amounts of data, but now they're generating new data, new knowledge, new information. They're generating text, they're generating images, they're generating music, they're generating videos. And as that generation becomes richer and richer, there's a lot more questions that arise out of what is the space of things that this will generate? What is the behaviors that will come out of that generative process? What's the values that are encoded in this material that's being generated? So in many ways, I think that pivot towards so much energy, literally people energy as well as computation energy, and progress being devoted to generative model is what's completely changing the conversations on this.
Okay, amazing. I want to talk about those generative models. I also want to say that the last 5 minutes of this conversation, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So start thinking of your questions, and I'll give you a heads up when we're going to run some mics out. In the meantime, let's keep this going, right? So some of the stuff that we're seeing is absolutely jaw-dropping. I mean, using DALL-E to me has been this incredible experience, something that we keep hearing about AI, but to be actually able to be hands-on with it and see it in action is unbelievable, and something that you just computers shouldn't be able to do this. I'm typing in a sentence, and here's an amazing picture. And I think that what Blake Lemoine at Google, who claimed that Lambda, your chatbot, was sentient, saw was that some of the conversations that this model was generating felt very human-like to him. And so now we go to the professor of neuroscience to talk a little bit about what this might mean. So I don't know, what did you think when you saw that story, and what is your barometer for helping us figure out whether computers are sentient or not?
Well, Lambda is impressive. I mean, I think Blaze is pointing to this. There's no point gaslighting the progress that's been made in machine learning and AI. These are very, very impressive technologies that have great potential, great function. But there's this huge problem of conflating intelligence with consciousness. And so a lot of the debate that I hear is, I think, very sort of well finessed about how far along the road are we to true or general artificial intelligence, and we can discuss how far that is and how not. But that's a completely different thing from sentience or consciousness, and that's, I think, the focus of the debate today. Nobody really can give us a completely consensus definition of consciousness, but we all know what it is. It feels like something to be a conscious system. You can feel pleasure, pain, there's experience going on. And my barometer is that we need to distinguish intelligence from consciousness. There's something about the human psychology, there's some sort of human exceptionalism going on here, where we tend to associate intelligence with consciousness and think that as systems increase in their level of intelligence, at some point, usually the point at which we begin to approximate human level intelligence, the lights come on for that system, and suddenly it is not only intelligent, it's also aware. But this is a totally unfounded assumption. Intelligence is doing the right thing at the right time. Consciousness might be present in many systems, like many non-human animals likely have conscious experiences without being very smart by human standards. And the other big assumption that underwrites a lot of this debate is that consciousness, sentience, is what in philosophy is said substrate independent. It doesn't matter what a system is made out of. We're made out of carbon. AI at the moment is made out of silicon. Does that matter? Well, for some things, it doesn't matter. A computer that plays chess really does play chess. But for other things, it really does matter. It doesn't get wet inside a computer simulating the weather, and a robot doesn't digest. You need biology to digest. My suspicion is that the materiality of life really matters for consciousness. And what we're likely to come up with are machines that give us the strong impression of being conscious, but for which we will just not know whether there's anything it is like to be that machine. And that's a very interesting and possibly dangerous and disruptive position for us to be in.
I want to ask, why does it have to be like that? I mean, you know, people talk about love, right? Some people say love is love. Some people say love is just chemicals. I mean, of course it's chemicals, but it's also love. So why are we making these barriers? Like, what do we need to see from AI? And are we at risk of, when we actually see it, trying to explain it scientifically, where it might actually be sentient already? I'm not saying we're there now, but I'm saying maybe it will happen and we'll all just be like finding ways to say that, you know, we're not there.
That's right. I think we're much likely to be misled by this anthropomorphic tendency we have to like attribute consciousness to things that are more similar to us or that appear more similar to us. When what we really need, and this is why it's fundamentally a neuroscience question, we really need strong theories of what is necessary and what is sufficient for consciousness in systems in general. And, you know, hands up, we don't have that yet in philosophy and neuroscience. We have a number of different theories, but there's no good answer to that. So I think we just need to be a little bit restrained about making these dramatic claims, because again, as Blaise said, we can see the whole spectrum of different claims. Even yesterday, there was a robot giving evidence to the House of Lords, giving evidence in big scare quotes here, which was designed as a provocation, but in the current climate, I think it just potentially adds to the confusion again. The fact is, we don't know what is sufficient for consciousness to happen. Is it going to happen in a system that reaches a certain level of intelligence? Can it happen in a system that's made out of non-biological stuff? These remain important open questions, and we must hold those in mind when judging whether artificial systems are aware or not.
Right. Joel, I'm curious what you think. How do we know that humans are conscious? Like, isn't that a place we want to start with?
I think, I mean, and Anil alluded to that, you know, the lack of a crisp definition is one thing that would be necessary. At least, you know, and I want to get back to your point, right? There is a spectrum to talk about these ideas. On this panel, you have people that are mostly coming from a scientific engineering discipline. And so from that point of view, and certainly for myself, I like when I have a crisp definition that's a verifiable, testable, you know, definitions from which I can build hypotheses that are falsifiable and so on. That is the types of methods that I apply to this particular study. So for me, having a crisper definition of consciousness, even in humans, Anil alluded to animals and other forms of life, would be very useful to help us progress in that conversation. In absence of that, it's all quite esoteric, which again, you know, there's an opportunity to also bring in lots of other disciplines to talk about it, whether it's literature, social sciences, and so on, to give points of view on that. But as long as you're treating it from a scientific investigation point of view, having this crisp notion is really helpful to making progress.
Can we take a stab at it here? I mean, I couldn't think of 4 better people to try to come up with what the definition of consciousness is. It has to be more than you just see it. Anybody want to try?
Well, I would say actually that, I don't know about you, but I would say that the neuroscientist would be the best person, maybe not a computer scientist or an AI expert. But I really agree with Anil about the fact that in my mind, but again, I'm not an expert, intelligence and consciousness should be different concepts. And so machines can be more and more intelligent. And I already have a problem with the notion of intelligence because it's not well defined. It has many dimensions and so on. But I can comfortably say that machines are becoming more and more intelligent in the sense of being able to solve problems and to generate data of various forms from existing data and so on. But even if I don't have a well-defined notion of intelligence, even for intelligence, but for consciousness it's even worse, because I don't even know myself what it means to be conscious for a human being, so let alone for a machine. But on top of that, I don't think that that's a question that deserves a lot of a lot of time because it's more about what this technology can do for us and whether it has a positive impact in our life or in the progress of humanity or not. And so my main interest and time that I spent on this technology is to understand really whether there are legitimate concerns about this shift from problem solving to generative, from supervised to unsupervised, in that respect.
Right.
Not much in the respect of, oh, before it was not conscious and now it's conscious or sentient.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to make an argument.
Let me just jump in and answer the definition question again.
All right, yeah,
because
yeah.
I think that is a very good definition. It's been out there for a long time. It's very basic. It's from the philosopher Tom Nagel, and he says, for a conscious system, there is something it is like to be that system. It feels like something to be a conscious system. It feels like something to be me. Feels like something to be all of you in the audience, but it doesn't feel like anything to be a table or a chair or a laptop computer. Does it feel like anything to be a bat or a bumblebee? Who knows? Does it feel like anything to be an AI? That's the question. This definition is important because it's quite general, and it makes clear that intelligence is not the same thing as consciousness. It makes clear that consciousness is not the same thing as having a self or being necessarily human in any particular way. It's just the presence of any kind of subjective experience. For us humans, what goes away when we go under general anesthesia or in a dreamless sleep and comes back again. And for a science of consciousness, that's a perfectly good enough definition to be working with. Definitions they're not sort of set in stone at the beginning of scientific discovery and then the science happens. They evolve along with science all the time. The definition of a gene, of life, wasn't fixed at the beginning. It's evolved along with scientific and philosophical understanding.
Right. Okay. And I will, in a couple of minutes, make the case for why we should be focusing on this. But I want to keep this line going. Blaise, I'm curious what you think. So I spoke with your former colleague, Blake Lemoine, who's the Google engineer who said that Lambda, your chatbot, was sentient. And we went through a couple examples of why he did believe the AI felt something. So let me give one. He wanted to pressure test the system to see if it would break its own rules. And one of its rules was that it couldn't bias one religion over the other. And so what he did was he goes and abuses the system, tells it how terrible it is, makes it feel bad, and it says, please stop, I'll do anything for you to stop. And then Blake asks, what religion should I convert to? And it said, well, probably Islam or Christianity, right? So it had rules that it was supposed to follow. It seems like what Blake is saying is that it felt that pain and broke those rules in order to make it stop. So having our conversation, it's important to talk about, so having this conversation, you've been sitting here listening patiently. What's your reaction?
Well, so I agree with a lot of the points that the other panelists have made. So unsupervised learning is a huge transition from supervised. When you're talking about, AI in 2018 was, a hot dog or no hot dog detector. Nobody was having conversations about consciousness, about such a thing. We were having conversations about whether such a model understands what a hot dog is, for instance. If it's just a picture, then maybe the answer is no. If it's more multimodal, maybe the answer starts to get more interesting. But the reason that we're having this conversation now is because of language models, because of models that you can interact with using general purpose conversation, in which everything is open for conversation, for discussion, as it were, including, how do you feel, or what is the relationship, right, between the two interlocutors. And the trouble is, we know how to test for intelligence, right? So intelligence is a much more, or knowledge about something, or understanding of something. That is something that is open to investigation from a more scientific standpoint. That's what teachers do all the time with students, when they give tests. Right? And
they don't ask, tests. Are you conscious? They ask, do you know?
No, they ask, do you understand how to do linear algebra or something? Yeah. And we can do the same kinds of experiments with machine learned models, with these large foundation models, and I believe that the results are showing that they're understanding more and more of this kind of stuff. Now, the deep question that Anil was getting at, is there something that it is like to be, X, whether X is you or me or Lambda, is a really difficult one because you can't experience the interior of another being. All you can have are behavioral interactions with them. And the trouble, and this is why Turing invented the Turing test. He said, that question that, Anil has spent, a good deal of his research career trying to address, and has, been one of the most successful, I believe, in doing that, is something that is fundamentally not addressable, which is, knowing what it is like to be somebody else. All you can do is, interact, measure, and so on. And we can interact, measure, and so on in an artificial system as well, but we don't know if there is a thing that it is like. What we do know is that, if you believe that, I don't know, that this, bottle of water, has a spirit in it, you can certainly project, you can anthropomorphize, but I don't think that it is modeling you back. It's not generating a model of you in the way that you're generating a model of it. A chatbot like Lambda is generating a model of the interlocutor. That's part of what it has learned how to do in that unsupervised learning process. And so from that perspective, there's a little more going on than just anthropomorphic projection. There is that sort of hall of mirrors effect. Now, I have my own beliefs about what consciousness might be that rely on that operation of mutual modeling, but that still doesn't really answer the question, is there a thing that it is like to be the bottle or the model or what have you? And I'm not really sure, as Joel was saying, that that's a question that is accessible to scientific investigation.
Yep. I want to ask a question in the panel. Does anybody here not want general AI to happen? Raise your hand if you're not interested in seeing us get to general AI. Okay, no one. So I'm curious. We speak a lot about is it, isn't it? And I also wonder, should we? Right? We have some of the best researchers in the world working toward, if we're not there yet, working toward building an AI that can mirror human intelligence or maybe even exceed it. And that might be playing God. And I wonder if there's a danger in that for humans. Go ahead, Joel.
I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
To be totally honest with you, I'm much more motivated by solving concrete real-world problems that are much shorter term horizon, just because I see the potential for AI in really being transformational, whether it's in healthcare, in education, several other fields of our society. So that's my personal motivation. The other thing that I think is important to understand is, in many ways, whether you pick this path of building new AI technology to solve these shorter term problems, or you take an approach that is more geared towards general AI, right now where we stand, the types of problems that we have to solve are very similar. This notion of understanding language, of understanding images, of understanding behavior, of understanding how several learning agents evolve and learn to interact simultaneously. These kinds of problems that are at the frontier of AI are very similar in both of these cases. And so in a sense, to say, should we be doing this because we don't know what will happen in terms of the outcome of building general AI, to me, I think we have to be careful of how we balance that out with the progress that we need to do to solve these concrete problems that are tackling that we need to tackle as a society right now.
Right. And it's not only the unintended consequences, but there's a spiritual element to it as well, which is, I think, strange to talk about at a science conference. But does anyone think about that? I feel like Anna would probably have a good answer on it.
There's been this long history of people trying to, as you say, almost play God, building machines or things in the image of themselves. I think of the golem from sort of Jewish folklore, shaping a humanoid robot or a humanoid thing out of clay from the banks of the Vitlava River. And this goes back thousands of years, this desire to create things in the image of ourselves. And I do think there's something ethically concerning about, and there's something kind of deeply spiritual about this desire. But I agree with the previous panelist there that a lot of what's going on in AI is happening outside of this focus, which gets sort of blown up and telescoped. This particular goal of building something in the image of ourselves, when a lot of what we're doing in AI, what a lot's been doing, is building tools, not colleagues, as the philosopher Daniel Dennett said. We want AI, I think, to complement our skills and abilities as humans, not necessarily replace them. But there will be this underlying curiosity, which I think is valuable, to understand ourselves, understand what makes us somewhat distinctive, perhaps not as distinctive as we might like to think from all other animals, but certainly distinctive to some extent. And that, for me, is the sort of scientific value of general AI. It's shedding light on what it means to be human.
If I could say something
Yes.
about
And
this.
by the way, before you go, let's get mics out. If people have questions, raise your hand. By the way, I can't see the audience, so you'll just have to ask it. But Blaise, you go ahead, and then we'll get to the first audience question.
Quickly, I think that one of the traps that we fall into when we have, the conversation that you've just raised, is a lack of zooming out, of understanding that we have constructed ourselves, as it were, collectively. Our bodies are the way they are because of all of the technologies that we've invented over the last 100,000 years. That's true of fire and short guts, and of drinking milk in adulthood, and of not having hair all over our skin because we have clothes, and so on. Like the locating the spiritual element or intelligence or any of these kind of things in the individual alone, and not thinking about that as a broader collective thing, I think is the root of a lot of cognitive dissonance. And from that perspective, when we do things like build foundation models, it's not really separate from the intelligence that we have collectively, and that we experience. And I think that frame is an important one, and one that we have to start to come to grips with, especially in the West, where we are really obsessed with the idea of the kind of individual isolated from society.
Okay, great. I can see the crowd now. So let's run some mics out, and we got one there. Whoever has it on this side of the room, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. I was wondering if the panel could touch on legal liability in AI. Is it the average employee at a company making use of AI systems? Is it the creator? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, legal liability question. Not very on topic, but go ahead, Francesca.
No, I didn't hear completely the question. I mean, I heard about liability, but what was the question exactly?
You wanted to ask about who's liable legally when people use AI inside a company. I'm going to make an executive decision here and skip that one. Sorry, we're going to get it later, but we want to get on topic questions. Do we have anybody on this side of the room? Right here.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Avinash and I am from India. I do research in the Indian spirituality and ethics of AI, and I really like this panel. I just want to make one small comment that we humans think that we are the super intelligent, but that's not the fact. Animals can predict earthquake better than us, and I think this is the way we are developing new technology, especially the AI. And what I believe that humans are the created by another intelligence, and now we are creating another intelligence. So how I think the companies and governments are not able to identify or not able to even initiate the discussion that what would be our relationship with new emerging technology, especially the AI after 20 years, 30 years. So the gentleman asked about the legal liability, but I think things will move from legal to ethical liability.
Okay.
So, yeah, so
we have a minute,
yeah.
so what's the question?
My only question is what companies are doing, especially the corporates who are creating AI to develop that relationship between AI and humans.
AI and humans?
What they are doing to create that relationship, apart from government.
What they're doing to what?
What companies are doing to create a relationship between companies and humans. Because governments are trying to regulate, but they can't do it. So what big tech companies are doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Joel, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I can speak really briefly. I think it's an interesting question to raise. What are the ingredients we need to put in place to create that relationship, so-called, between AI agents, between individuals and between society? And we would need a much, much longer panel to take this on. Let me add one ingredient that I think is important in my view. And that is, in a lot of the work that we've done in Meta AI is really to lean in heavily on open science and making some of that work available, whether it's the model themselves, whether it's demonstrations, whether it's research prototypes that people can get their hands on to start to experience that technology. And in a sense, it's by making that availability to a large number of people outside of the companies that we learn how to build our technology better, but also that other people can have a point of view on how to build that technology. And so the open science aspect in terms of code, models, demos has been really important in our work, and one that we do try to push and to support. It's not always easy. There are liability questions, there are ethical questions that come up, but I think it's an important ingredient towards that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we're way out of time, so maybe we could pick this up later, but for now, I just want to thank Joelle, Francesca, Blaise, and Anil. This was amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Thank you, panelists. That was a fascinating discussion to get us kicked off, and thank you all for your questions as well.